these things.
So Sharon and Holly, you have both seen this, so I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes. Go, tell us about this.
I'm going to fess up as we start that I have not finished the last 20 minutes. I have it primed and next to me, and I didn't quite manage it before this. So I can't give you my definitive view on the last 20 minutes of a 7
We,
episode
I'll tell
series.
you what, we'll
Forgive
swap you
me.
the last 20 minutes of the Midwich Cuckoos for the last 10 minutes of Men. So,
Yeah.
but okay. So Sharon, tell us what's that's about, and then Holly, you can chime in.
Okay, yeah, just the background. It is based on a novel, 1959 novel by John Wyndham, who was categorized at the time as writing cozy catastrophes. But I think as time has gone on, I think he was a master of his actual craft, and he would set these things in a world that people recognize. So most of his novels are set in like in England of the 1950s, that you could walk out your door and that is the England that you see. So it's of its time. And so this is obviously a novel of its time, but they've brought this adaptation up to date. So it's in modern day. And the start of the premise is one day, inexplicably, everyone in a village, Midwich, are rendered unconscious. And there is like this bubble around the village. And it lasts, this sort of unconsciousness state lasts for 12 hours, I believe. But anyone who approaches it starts to feel unwell. Then as soon as they enter this sort of like invisible area, they are rendered unconscious themselves. And sort of planes flying overhead are like brought down because their pilots are just fall unconscious. So there's like a dome, an invisible dome over this village. And then within a very short space of time, it becomes apparent that every woman of childbearing age is pregnant, from teenage girls right up to like premenopausal women. So there is every woman in the village has a baby, and it transpires that they then all go into labour at exactly the same time, at exactly the same moment, and each of their children is born sort of simultaneously. So this one event is clearly linked. And these children are then born and they're raised in these villages. They're left with their mothers, and because this is a modern drama, they do DNA tests and they see if they can analyze them, and they find that each of the children has the DNA of their mother, but they have no parental DNA. They've got no mitochondrial, or it's all just
No paternal DNA.
No paternal DNA at all. It's all just their mother's DNA, and it becomes obvious that these mothers are basically a host rather than the origin of these children. And as they grow older, they start to exhibit certain characteristics that would suggest that their origin is not human. So they find out, it's not a spoiler, that they have a hive mind, that one information that you tell one child or something that one child learns, they then all learn more or less simultaneously. And as they then grow older, this sort of strangeness about them takes a slightly sinister turn. And that's all I'm going to say about the plot.
All right. Okay. So Holly, what did you think from that point on?
Well, I'm going to add my first addition is that John Wyndham also wrote, unless I am wrong, Day of the Triffids,
Yes,
which may be one that's also familiar to others. Obviously, this is not the first adaptation of it. I know Sharon will, I'm sure, be able to pinpoint when the first one was done, because I certainly can't, which was a
Village of the Damned.
Yes. And there the similarities between the children was achieved with identical blonde hair
and green eyes.
Whereas this, they managed to achieve some interesting similarities between the children through remarkably similar fringes. I appreciate that sounds like a slightly bizarre statement made, but I found it quite disconcerting as a sort of point of reference. These are not necessarily very good fringes, and they all have the same not very good fringe. But it was a really good way of, because they were slightly bizarre, it gave you this strong feeling that the children were slightly bizarre with these very slightly odd haircuts. I know it sounds like a really, really weird point to focus on, but it was the otherness that came across with the hair. which was that, and similarly slightly almost blank expressions. Would that be the right?
They're all the
Which
same height and they're all the same sort of build. So apart from the hair, that's the only thing that distinguishes them and their ethnicities.
And yet the hair is still quite similar. And the expressions are similar. There's very little emotion displayed, but except through the eyes.
Just a quick thing. Sharon, you mentioned about the ethnicities, because that was going to be a question I was going to have, because when they did Village of the Damned, there was something very Aryan nation about all the kids, and I wondered whether they'd because I know this is set in modern day, so they've updated it, so it's not set in the 50s like most of the other adaptations have been. So they actually do have kids of different ethnicities in this village.
Yes, because that's where the whole DNA from their mothers comes from. That they take on the ethnicity of their mothers.
Okay.
Whereas the original one, it's clear that they are aliens, because they all have like this, almost like albinos. They've got this very white hair.
Yeah.
They've got strange pale eyes and very sort of pale skin. Whereas I think they want to introduce a little bit more diversity into it, maybe physically or maybe just.
Was it in your face? Was it really noticeable? Or
if you know the story, it's I think they picked up on the fact that these children are all eerily similar.
Yeah.
I think they managed to establish that without them looking all the same.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, that's good then. That's a good.
It didn't really matter the fact that they all had a different ethnic origin, because the way the children behaved, it looked like you could tell that they were kin.
Yeah, absolutely connected to each other. What they also did that highlighted the fact that they were the children of the mothers, not the fathers, was that they were all the same ethnicity as the mothers, whereas the families were to varying degrees more complicated than that. Without again adding, without giving anything away, there were some things that were a little more complex.
Well, now you've said this, all I wanted to do is watch this show and see a black kid with a fringe. But carry on.
Yeah, the black kids. Well, I'm going to first say it was only the black girls who had fringes. I'm afraid the boy did not.
Okay, cool. At least
fantastic cast, as a by the by. It's Keeley Hawes, who is one of the key characters, who plays. Who is one of the obviously adults. I don't know if we can say I'm going to say the relationship is the grandmother of one of the children of somebody. And she is obviously superb because she's always superb.
National treasure.
Well, absolutely, and there were a number of other people who were excellent, but I was the one who just jumped out at me because I recognise her so clearly, and I'm having to check her names. Is Ashley Loftus, who was in Discovery of Witches, and is sort of indelibly etched into my mind because of that. Who I thought was superb. I thought it was a really very, very strong cast and quite a compelling watch. I've pretty much binged it.
I did in sort of 2 at a time over the last week. Sort of watch 2, then have a rest, then watch 2, have a rest, and then sort of watch 2, then do the final.
So it moves along then. It keeps you interested. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I've done the sort of the same.
Okay,
so
final verdict, and how many stars would you give it?
I liked it actually, because I'm always I'm not a purist. You may think I am when it comes to novel adaptations, but I'm happy that people can take the novel as an inspiration, which I regard this as being. But I felt that it was true to the spirit of the novel without being exactly the same. So in that regard, I liked it. I thought it was a good adaptation. I thought they did the touch points that you get in the novel. I thought they were there. The otherness of the children I thought was superb. The cast was really good, so I actually really liked it. I thought it was a really good adaptation, enjoyable. 7 parts, so it's accessible. You can get through it. I don't know if they're going to do a second one. I'm not sure. It's one of those books that's a standalone book, but then Handmaid's Tale was a standalone book, and they've done like 5 seasons of that. So it's possible that they've got mileage. They can do more things with it. So that being said, I really enjoyed it. I will give it a 4.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to mirror that. I really enjoyed it. Again, thought it stayed true to the spirit of the book. I haven't read the book in years, but it had a really good feel. I agree on the adaptations if they maintain the spirit, and word for word adaptations can be very variable anyway. Definitely liked it. I would also give it a 4. Haven't got to the last second. I prefer things not dragging on into unnecessary sequels. I don't feel it always does things merit, but
yeah, I agree. There's a lot of shows that I look at and go, that should be one season, and thank you very much. So, all right. So that is a 4 for the Midwich Cuckoos.